Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to solve quadratic equation. We have here four equations. The four equations have the common thing, we will know it soon, that the roots are 2 and 3, or 2 minus 3, or minus 2, 3, minus 2, minus 3. So every equation of those equations has two solutions. The two solutions either 2 and 3, or 2 and minus 3, or minus 2 and 3, or minus 2 and minus 3. This depends on two things: the sign of the middle term and the sign of the free term or last term. So let's start by first equation. Here we have x squared plus 5x plus 6. We are searching for two solutions. So here will be x and here will be x, because the sign of this term, the last term, is positive, meaning that our solutions either both positive or both are negative. This depends on the sign of the middle term. So in the middle term here, this is positive, means that our solutions are positive. I mean by our solution are positive, not the final solution, but the sign here. This is positive and this is positive. So this is positive and this is positive. Next step is 6 is 1 multiplied by 6, because we know that this is positive and this is positive, so the two numbers here must be positive. So 1 multiplied by 6, 2 multiplied by 3. So which one of those that the multiplication of the two numbers gives 6 and the addition of the two numbers give 5? It's 2 and 3. So this 2 and this 3. After this, if I have two multiplied numbers equals 0, this means that either one of them is 0 or both of them are 0. So either x plus 2 equals 0, so x equal minus 2, or x plus 3 equals 0, so x equal minus 3. So the solution here is minus 2 and minus 3. Next example is this. In this example, the main difference between this example and this example is that the middle term here is positive and here is negative. What is this? What is the meaning of this? As we see in here, we know that the multiplication of the two numbers gives the free term, or 6 here. So 2 multiplied by 3, positive 2 multiplied by positive 3 gives plus 6. And the addition of those two numbers gives the number in the middle, which is 5. Here is the same. X something 2, x something 3 equal 0. We need the two numbers. The multiplication of those two numbers gives 6. So either the sign of the both numbers are positive or negative. Why? Because if you multiplied positive will give positive, like plus 6, or negative will give positive. So if this negative and this negative will give also plus 6. This depends on the sign of the middle term. This is negative 5. Negative 5 means that the sign of both will be negative. So this is negative 2, this is negative 3. Now, if you try to multiply, negative 3 multiplied by negative 2 will give 6. Negative 2 plus negative 3 will give negative 5. So now we can continue. X minus 2 equals 0. So this gives x equal 2. X minus 3 equal 0. So this gives x equal 3. And our solution is 2 and 3. So from here we can deduce this note. If the last term is positive, this means that either the two numbers are positive or are negative. This is the main story here. For the next two examples, you will find two different things from this example and one different thing from this example. Here, in this example, this 5 and this 1, and this plus 6 and this negative 6. So what is the difference? Also, the solution will be, or the numbers will be 2 and 3, negative or positive. So we will write something like this: x 2 3. Now if you think a little, this is negative 6. Negative 6 meaning that you have positive multiplied by negative. So one of those numbers will be positive and one will be negative. And here this plus x, meaning that when you add those two numbers which have different signs, will give a positive. When you add E plus B equal C, if C is positive and one of those is positive and one is negative, so the bigger one will be positive. Like for example, 3 plus negative 2, this will be 1. Why? Because you add two numbers which have different signs. So the answer will be the sign of the answer will be like the biggest one, and you will do subtraction. So this is the idea. So now we have 2 and 3. If you multiply 2 and 3 will give 6, but here there is negative, so one of those will be negative and one will be positive. This depends on the sign of the middle term. This middle term is positive, meaning that the sign of the biggest number will be positive. So this is positive and this is negative. If you try now to multiply, negative 2 multiplied by plus 3 will give you negative 6, and negative 2 plus 3 will give you plus 1. Last example is the same as like this, except the sign of the middle term is negative. So we know that the answer will be x something 2 and x something 3. As always, here negative 6 like here, meaning that one is positive and one is negative. This depends on the sign of the middle term. This middle term has negative sign, so the biggest one will be negative and the smallest one will be positive. Then continue the solution. Here, x minus 2 will give you 0, so x equal 2, and x plus 3 will give you 0, so x equal negative 3. So x either 2 or negative 3. Here, the same, x plus 2 equals 0. This gives you x equal negative 2. X minus 3 give you 0, so x equals 3. So x negative 2 or 3. So here, the idea here is that if the free or last term is negative, this means that one of the numbers will be negative and one will be positive, like here and here. Which one is the negative and which one is the positive, this depends on the sign of the middle term. If the middle term is negative, means that the bigger number will be, or the biggest number will be negative. If the sign of the middle term is positive, this means that the biggest number is positive. So the four cases is now, if the last term is positive, like here and here, this means that the sign of the two numbers are the same, negative or positive. And you will, since the last term is positive, you will add the two numbers. If the sign of the middle term is negative, means that the two numbers are negative, because you add negative 3 and negative 2 will give you negative 5. If the sign of the middle term is positive, means that the two numbers are positive. So 3 plus 2 will give 5. But if the last term is negative, this means that one of the numbers are negative and one is positive. This depends on the sign of the middle term. If the sign of the middle term is positive, this means that the sign of the biggest number is positive. If the sign of the negative number, if the sign of the middle term is negative, means that the biggest number is negative. I hope you understand the whole idea here. This is the all cases you will find in solving equation like this: x squared plus ex plus b equals 0. Equals 0. How can, now this is an additional part if you want to watch. Now, how can I know that this thing is negative and positive? It's easy. X plus c1 multiplied by x plus c2 equals 0. So if you multiply this by this, x multiplied by x give you x squared. Then c1 multiplied by x plus c2 multiplied by x give you c1 plus c2 x. Then c1 multiplied by c2 equals 0. So now c1 c2 equal b and c1 plus c2 equal a. So from here, if b is positive, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. If b is positive, it's like the first and the second example. So if b is positive, meaning that the two numbers has the same sign. And this is true, because If B is positive, means that C1 and C2 and C2 both have the same sign. And if B is negative, like here and here, this means that the two numbers has opposite signs. C1 and C2 have opposite signs. Okay. Next thing, for C1 plus C2. For C1 plus C2, if B is positive, like here and here, okay, this means that, as we see here, if E is positive, both are positive. So here we can write it. 1 minute. So now we say that C1 multiplied by C2 equal B. If B is positive, C1 and C2 both have the same sign. So here, if E positive, in this case, means that C1 and C2 positive signs, C1 and C2 positive. And this is the same as here. This is positive and this is positive, both positive. Next, E is negative, means that C1 and C2 both negative. It's like here, this is positive, this is negative, so both is negative. Next, if B negative, like here and here, one is positive and one is negative. C1 and C2 have opposite signs. Now, if E positive, this means that the biggest of C1 and C2 will be positive. It's like here, the biggest one is positive, and if E is negative, means the biggest of C1 and C2 will be negative. And it's like here. So this is the conclusion. I hope this video is beneficial for you. If you have any question, you can write it in comments, and if you want me to explain special something, you can write it in the comments and I will do it. Good luck and see you in next video.